Welcome to Chronic Combat Conversations, TB's Tale of the Tape, with your host, TB Scouting MMA. What is going on, party people? Thanks so much for joining me today. We're here to do a quick little look into what we got coming up for UFC 313. I'm not really picking sides. I'm not here to plant any flags. What I am here to do is get into the analysis, any fights that give us enough from a tell the tape, a statistical perspective. Let's take a look at where some guys are for their camp, if there's any trajectories of their career, things that might be, important to know to go into the breakdown aspect of it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, finish up my research, and I'll see you guys here live Thursday night with the guru to break down the card in full with our amazing guests weekly. So just so you guys know, here we are, Chronic Combat, up 20 units in 2025 so far. And, the right thing to do would be to like, subscribe. It costs you nothing. You're supporting the guys. We're here giving you some winning picks, looking for some dogs. We love playing overs, or just finding some winning plays overall. So make sure you guys are joining us weekly. You can find us live every Thursday, 8 o'clock Eastern. We are now adding extra content. Guru will be giving his gut reaction after the fights, either late Saturday or on Sunday. And I'll be here doing a little TB's Tell the Tape and doing a breakdown into what's going on for all these cards going forward. So what I am very excited for today is we're going to start from the bottom here. As we go through all these fights, some of the things that I'm looking for before I get into the tape aspect of the fight is, the tale of the tape. And this is why I found it so interesting to be able to do this content. And I love the guru, don't get me wrong. But, it is interesting to kind of just get a unbiased look at what is presented in each of these matchups. Lou loves tapes. So do I. It all depends on the type, right? So for this one, we've got Chris El Guapo Gutierrez versus John Sexy Mexi Castaneda. And mind you, people in the chat, if they have a nickname on UFC stats, they get their nickname. But if they don't, well, this is where I'm going to need some help workshopping so that the guru doesn't yell at me for some bad nicknames on Thursday. So I'm going to my team, All right, so let's break it down here. We've got basically same age on both sides. Grateful Dude here for the nicknames. Good. We'll get there. I've got a few already. Well, we're going to workshop them, see if you guys like them, right? Sexy Mexi, that's his own. El Guapo. So Sexy Mexi, they're the same age, but we've got a 4-inch reach advantage for Castaneda. And that Gutierrez actually has a 3-inch height advantage. So if you're taller but don't have the reach advantage, that typically it goes to the guy that has the reach advantage. Also, we see the Castaneda switch stance. We got Sexy Mexi here. Hey, hang tight. We're getting there. I'll use the Gaethje one. Don't worry. We'll do that. And here, I think Gutierrez does actually do a better job of switching stances. So shout out to Nate Latshaw. He's just kind of pulling the stats. He gave us the privilege of, displaying his tell the tape stats for our analysis. And shout out to Nate Latshaw. Use all of his free stats. Now, UFC stats classifies Chris Gutierrez as orthodox. He typically is, but he can switch stance and he'll skirt around the outside. All right. Looks like they both spend a similar time at distance. Gutierrez, though, he has a way better striking differential. He lands more strikes per minute at distance, just without calculating differential. And I think the calf kicking advantage, we can see this guy, he's landing almost double the amount of strikes on percentage to the legs. So even though he's giving up the reach, since he uses the calf kick the most to kind of stifle the forward movement of his opponents, and what is that? Castaneda, bit of forward movement, likes boxing. So, man, this is going to be a really interesting matchup here. Now, if we get into some of the defense, we see that Gutierrez does a way better job with significant strike defense, specifically at the head level. And that's what we're looking for to avoid knockouts. And Gutierrez, he's got way better distance strike defense for the head. So 15% advantage there. Also, we see that Castaneda absorbs about over 6 strikes per minute, whereas Gutierrez only absorbs half of that. Now, we're going to get a large octagon to work out of, so that's another interesting thing to consider. Last part, we'll get into the wrestling and grappling. Seems like, if anything, Castaneda should have the advantage. He's got, way more takedowns attempted per 5 minutes of distance. We're talking about 2 compared to point 0.4 on the Gutierrez side. Um, Also, of time and control position, Castaneda triples up Gutierrez. So 15% control to Gutierrez at 4%. And the control rate of their clinch and ground time. I mean, if Castaneda is getting into the wrestling and grappling, well, then, yeah, he's expected to have an advantage in this matchup. We've seen Gutierrez have trouble with that in the past. Song Yadong, Cody Durden, plenty of other ideas where, yeah, Gutierrez maybe hasn't done the best. So really tough. If this fight is taking place on the feet at 15 minutes, advantage seems to go to Gutierrez. If there is wrestling grappling involved, it could be Castaneda. So we're going to need some tape here. Going to need to go into some of the tendencies. No real clear, distinct advantage across the board for either guy. Good question, guys. You can let me know what you guys are betting, but we're not planting our flag here unless I already have a play on the fight. I was looking at some maybe Gutierrez plus money, but that doesn't exist anymore. It's basically even money around the board. So, yeah, and split, both fighters by split. It makes sense. I mean, it's a close fight. Could go either way, wrestling, grappling. Yeah, it's a tough one. So we're going to move on. Our next fight. We've got Jordan Shakur Santos versus Ozzy Crazy Train Diaz. Now, that's the first TB nickname. What do you guys think? Crazy Train? Do you think that one works? Shout out to Ozzy Osbourne. I like Crazy Train for Ozzy Diaz because this guy, he's going to be in some crazy fights. What up, Phantom? Yeah, so how's this different from the normal show? Well, I'm not really giving out best bets or really picks here. We're going through a breakdown of a tail of the tape, seeing if there's any distinct statistical or analytical advantages. And I want to hear from you guys a little bit too. Any cool nicknames we could come up for Thursday, and just taking a sneak peek into the card before we give you our best bets for the weekend. So shout out to you guys in the chat. Let me know. Is there anything you're thinking? All right. Well, Shakur and Jordan Santos, I mean, is he related to Brenson Shibero? I need to know. They have the exact same body type. Like, if you were to cut off the head, that's Brenson Ribero's body. I swear they just kind of like transplanted it. I don't know. I'm like Julian Marquez. I'm like Ozzy Diaz. I could be a little bit of anything. So, yeah, maybe, right? In this matchup, no real statistics to go off of. So, just looking at the tail of the tape, we got Ozzy Diaz. Fought his last fight up at 205, right? Yeah, we're getting Jordan Santos here, middleweight. So he's given up a bit of size in this matchup. It's 4 inches of height, 4 inches of reach, but Santos is the younger fighter by 7 years. So the question is the advantage in the reach made up for by the speed of the natural middleweight Santos? It's a good question. I think, we're going to have to find out. So we're going to do a little digging on the tape here. There's probably a little bit to learn about each of these guys. It's just seeing that they went and sacrificed Ozzy Diaz against Zhang Ming Yang. He got knocked out by Joe Pyfer. He's been finished plenty. And Jordan Santos, well, he's never been finished. So that already stands out as an advantage to me. He's got 3 knockouts, 4 submissions. Could be. You never know. Yeah, but ultimately, Jordan Santos here, I think if we were to take a look at, because we don't really get striking or grappling stats, if we just look at like finishing and how these guys prefer to fight their fights, on paper, Tapology scouting, Diaz is going to lose by knockout, if anything. And what can Santos do? Well, he can bring them mitts, and he can strike to the body. He can strike in the pocket. But Diaz now dropping down from 205 to 185. We got to see how things look on the scale. So that's a factor we need to consider in this fight. We're going to need to do some tape study and just see if there's anything that could be picked up from a technical perspective, because there's not really much to go off of statistically. So we're going to move on. We've now got Myron the Legend Santos. He's going to need to do a lot more before he really earns the nickname, the Legend. Ozzy is known for two things only: not being a Diaz brother and getting knocked out. Neither of those two are good. Yeah, I would agree. Not ideal. So the Legend, Myron Santos, he needs to add more to his legend versus Francis Fire Marshall. Man, someone needs to put out the fire, because Francis had a really hard time doing it when the going gets tough in his career. And that's what I'm worried about here, because I expect the going to get kind of tough. You look, I mean, age, they're both younger guys in their career. No real advantage. 1 year difference. No advantage. Height, Same 2-inch advantage for Francis Marshall, but given that they each have a 72-inch reach, no advantage for either guy. Man, I mean, once again, not really a lot of fights to go off of here on the Maidon Santos side. It's really based off of a fight where Khan Offley came in way smaller, giving up a lot of reach, and giving up a lot of athleticism. Francis Marshall, what he does have is some forward pressure, ability to wrestle a little bit. We see he attempts a high level of takedowns per 5 minutes of distance. And that's what he's going to need to do here is just smother Santos and not let him get off his game at range. That's the only way you can kind of see it happening, because if this fight does take place at distance, man, the striking defense is just not good. And the accuracy for Francis Marshall, and I know he's faced tough competition, and we got to contextualize the competition here. You know, Isaac Dolgarian, you basically don't get to accumulate any stats on him. And then for William Gomi, I mean, that guy's very hard to track down, but if you are a good athlete, you have just enough pressure and you keep on it, well, you can give him some trouble. And that's where we see Francis in round 3 kind of accumulate enough to where he has a little bit of success. But realistically, we're going to need a similar type of performance against Santos, and we're going to need Santos to underperform from distance to allow Marshall to close the distance and even offer any type of danger. And with the large octagon, man, I'm going to need to do some tape, see if Marshall really has what it takes to get through the fire, close the distance on Santos here, because, well, what we don't love, Santos, 24% of his time being controlled, and Francis Marshall, he has a 73% control rate of all clinch and ground time. There's a clear path to victory, so I'm not going to rule it out. I got to do some tape because, man, it might just be that Santos is getting overrated, maybe not the best level of competition, and Khan Offley, we just saw, man, he's willing to not really to quit when the going gets tough, whether it's being finished or anything like that. So we're moving on. We've got the Great White, Alex Morono. Swear that's not my nickname. It's his own. And I think it has more to do with sharks than anything else. So let's not give him too tough at the time here. But he does really represent it in body color. I mean, look at this guy, the Great White versus the Lion, Carlos Leal. And poor Carlos, you know, here we are. He's 4 years younger. He's got a 2-inch reach advantage. Carlos, same height as Morono, both orthodox strikers. So technically, the real advantage here is the 4 years younger for Leal, 2-inch reach advantage for Leal. Let's take a look at some of the pace from distance. I mean, Leal has a ridiculous pace. That's huge. 8 strikes. And that's against Renat that he puts that up. So contextualizing that, that's pretty good. And he spends 77% of the fight at distance with Renat. So that means he's not accepting just blanket control time. Yeah, I know that a lot of this is for one fight for Leal, and he absorbs a lot of strikes in that fight against Renat. It's a real banger. But I mean, Alex Morono, man, you know, his pace, he is typically a little bit higher than his opponents. But I'd guess if we were to do an aggregate of like his last few fights compared to previous, I think we've seen a drop off in the Alex Morono experience. And that's what I'm really worried about here. Attrition, that's another big factor of these guys when you're looking into some of their career and the trends. I mean, Leal, man, seems like the trend is we're so sorry that you got robbed against Renat. Here's Alex Morono. Do what you will. Can Morono get to the grappling where you'd imagine that he'd have some sort of advantage? But it's up to Leal to manage that distance and keep Morono from grappling. And when have we ever really seen Alex Morono go for an aggressive takedown attack? He only averages, you know, less than 1 takedown attempted per 5 minutes of distance. That's really not good. So if this fight is just taking place at range, the stats are going to tell us that Leal should have a much higher pace. And, you know, we don't see a lot of it here, but at least from their finishing statistics, you know, 10 knockouts on the side of Leal, he's clearly got the power advantage. So I'm really interested to see what happens as this fight plays out. I'm sure as you guys look into the line, yeah, it's a bit wide. But it seems to me like if this fight plays out from distance, and there's a great chance that it does, Leal should be the one getting it done based off the stats and the fact he's going to have the reach advantage. He's the younger guy. He's going to be faster. He's got better defense, and he's eaten less damage as of recent. So Let's see. Before we get into this next one, Bruno the Hulk Fajeda versus Armin Superman Petrosian. Just give your boy 1 second here for a quick little reset, little hydration, get a little coffee going. All right, so the Hulk, Bruno Fajeda versus Superman Armin Petrosian. Wow, this is an interesting matchup for me. Looking at the tail of the tape, Armin, 2 years older. The 1 inch reach advantage goes to Fajeda. A 5 inch height advantage goes to Petrosian. However, with that 1 inch reach advantage, well, Bruno's got the advantage in that aspect. Now, it says orthodox stance for both. I'll tell you, both these guys switch their stance pretty well. But yeah, typically we're going to see them switching to match each other's stances as they go. In this matchup, Armin Petrosian coming off of some finish losses, a knockout at range, also a submission loss against Adolfo Vieira. We have Bruno coming in off of a third-round submission loss to Abus Magomedov. His other knockout loss coming against Nursultan Ruziboyev back in July 23. Man, I'm really interested here because I think if this fight is taking place at distance, from a pace perspective, Armin Petrosian should be landing more strikes. That seems to be clear. He's got a high rate of strikes landed. However, a vast majority of those are kicks, calf kicks, kicks to the body. He really doesn't throw a high percentage of head strikes. And both these guys have very similar head strike defense. So I imagine if Bruno is finding his way into the pocket off of the kicks of Petrosian, kind of like how he explodes into the pocket in multiple knockout victories, well, we see who has the clear advantage in power. I mean, Armin Petrosian, 0% knockdown rate, whereas Bruno is at 3.8%. I feel like I got to get the divisional averages up for a confirmation, but that's high, man. Typically, you see something in like the 1% range from a knockdown perspective. So right away, I think Bruno's got a huge advantage in the power. Petrosian's been knocked out in 2 of his losses, submitted in another. And wouldn't you know it, Bruno's got 3 submissions on his record as well. I don't know. Something's telling me it's power versus volume. And Petrosian, we haven't really seen him do a great job of avoiding people's power. So I think Bruno finds a way to use his switch stance in middle of combinations. I think that could be a really interesting look, given that even though he's the shorter guy, we don't expect Armin to wrestle at all. And both these guys have proficient kicking games. So I'm leaning that if anybody goes for a takedown in this matchup, Bruno has shot 1.4 takedowns per 5 minutes of distance. So say he's not having success landing the power, I expect he's going to at least try to shoot 1 to 2 takedowns per round. And maybe that's another path to victory besides the power differential for Bruno Fajeda. I see no real advantage on a tail of the tape for Armin aside from volume and height. So do with that information what you may. If you know what the lines are looking like, we're going to move on. Joshua, the Fearless Fan, Ray, the Force Awakens, Saruya. It's like I'm going for, I don't know, Star Wars, right? Like they do the, isn't Ray like the new character? I feel like I'm going to need a better nickname here. Maybe Sunshine, like from Remember the Titans. He had like the flowing hair also. So like Ray, like Sunshine, Ray of Sunshine. I don't know. Going to need help here. Please in the chat, let me know if you got a good nickname for Ray Saruya. All right, to the tail of the tape. Both these guys are young. No real advantage in age. Reach, 3 inches for Ray Saruya. We've got a 1-inch height advantage for Ray Saruya. From Josh Van, man, he's got a lot of UFC experiences. He's also won a lot of rounds in the UFC against better level of competition. When you look at if this fight were to play out at distance for 15 minutes, seems pretty clear. Plus 2.77 striking differential for Van, minus 1.43 for Ray. Yep, pretty clear to me. Josh Van would win the striking exchanges. Now, the question is, as we go down to the grappling exchanges, well, yeah, Ray Saruya, that's where we expect him to have the advantage, right? 42% of time spent in control position. That's high level. That's about 2 minutes of every 5 he's spending in control. And Josh Van, we have seen, him be controlled for 10% of his fight time. Now, what generally happens, he gets about 50-50 control with his opponents because once he gets taken down early, gets into some scrambles, gets into some reversals, then he starts pushing his own pace and even landing takedowns of his own. I don't think that's really what he's going to be trying to do here. I think Ray's going to be clearly outclassed on the feet. And his 3-inch reach advantage, well, that's going to be helpful in the grappling exchanges and going for potential submissions. But I think Josh Van, we've seen an improvement in submission defense. I don't think that that's going to be a concern for him here, but that's clearly the path to victory for Ray Saruya: grappling, submissions, control decision. But Joshua Van, his pace, his ability to work to the body, it's a huge percentage that he lands to the body at 22%. He doesn't really throw calf kicks. So, yeah, there's a few leg strikes in there, but he's not really going to open up the threat of getting kicks caught for takedowns. He's more of a boxer. So that should work out as far as, explosive stuffing takedown reactions. Van should be able to work the pace as the fight goes on. And he has a clear advantage there. And we've seen, he's got solid takedown defense, 81%. He's faced 2 takedowns for every 5 minutes spent in defense. So he's gotten to a lot of striking matchups. So I'm really curious to see with Josh Van, like someone that's really just committed to wrestling him. I think that there's a clear path for Ray. And I think, you'll find out what our best bets and ideas are, but this is one of those clear live betting spots if you're going to be on the favorite. Josh Van typically loses round 1. We could trust Ray to shoot 10 takedowns per 5 minutes at distance. So, I think in the first round, we're going to get a lot of Ray wrestling. And you see in the expected round percentage, this is a great stat from Nate Latshaw. Josh Van only wins 2/3 of the rounds that he fights in, or he's at least expected to. And typically, if he's losing a round, it's the first one. So what does that tell us? Prime live betting spot, Josh Van, live entry. If Ray Saruya starts slowing down like he does in the Carlos Hernandez fight, cardio is a huge thing. Pace is a huge thing. Body shots would be a huge thing to deter grappling pace. Josh Van could be interesting. Live betting spot. Look into it. All right, we're moving on. Curtis Razorblades versus the Rizzler, Rizvan Kuniev. Please, people, let me know if this is going to work for the Guru. I think we've got the Rizzler locked and loaded for a matchup with Curtis Razorblades. Not a lot to go from on a statistics perspective. And if you ask, why are we making this matchup? 34-year-old Blades, 33-year-old Rizzler, 4-inch reach advantage for Razorblades. They're the same height. They're both typically going to strike from orthodox. Blades might switch it up a little bit. I mean, what are we doing here? We got a guy coming straight off Contenders right into a Blades matchup. And why is Blades having to fight a guy like this? What this gives me a reminder of is Jairzinho Rosenstrike type bookings where you get really difficult opponents in main events, but then you get really low level opponents on prelim fights or stuff like that where you can kind of pad your record and then you just get beat up by the best of the best. So I think Blade should win here. Nothing really statistically to go off of to compare to Rizvan. But if we did have the stats open, I mean, Blades is just absolutely ridiculous takedown pace. And this is the question, this is what we'll talk about Thursday on the Best Bets and Breakdown show. Yeah, is Blades chin shot? Where's he at in his career right now? Does he have what it takes to continue being a major player at heavyweight, or is this kind of his first step to being pushed out the door? Because if you're losing to the Rizzler in his UFC debut, we're gonna have to have some conversations, Curtis. I don't think we're gonna like him. All right, make sure you guys are doing the right thing. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, now's the time to do it. Please throw a like, helps us out a ton. And yeah, man, we're going to be seeing you guys live Thursday with Sean Orr. Going to be an absolutely awesome show. So please like and subscribe, following us on the associated places for all of our bets and analysis. All right, so we've got King Green, aka Bobby. I don't know what's his nickname and what's his real name these days, so we're going with Bobby. Yeah, listen to Forrest. Be cool like Forrest. Smash that like button. Do the right thing. I won't judge you if you haven't already, but there's time to fix that, right? So King Green here coming in. I mean, absolutely terrible from a tell the tape perspective. This is like as bad as it gets. King Green, 10 years older, giving up 4 inches of reach, giving up 1 inch of height. You've got Mauricio Shogun Hoofy. Do we like Shogun? Is that a good one? Let me know. We'll see if it's good. Yeah, this is going to be interesting because Shogun Hoofy, he should have all the advantages here on paper. He's way faster. He's got, way more reach, way younger. He's fighting out of a great gym. He seems very explosive. Bobby Green's defense, while we see a 70% head strike defense, yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of times where we've seen him getting caught more and more often, even in like the Jim Miller fight recently. Don't love it. But if we're looking at what pace might look like, well, this is where it starts getting interesting because Hoofy, for all the glazing that we want to do on the reach and all that, well, he only lands 4 strikes per minute at distance, whereas Bobby, he's up at 7. Hoofy, he gets outlanded by 0.55 strikes per minute at distance, whereas King Green, he's almost at 3 strikes more per minute at distance than his opponents. Now, this is where it gets ugly in the attritional battle. I mean, Hoofy hasn't been knocked down yet. He's landed 2 knockdowns. And King Green, he's been knocked down 5 times. It's been getting bad. I mean, the Jalen Turner one, not good. Jim Miller hurts him a bit early. We've seen him in a lot of sketchy places. Drew Dober sent him to Shadow Realm. Don't love it. But then you're like, well, yeah, Hoofy's got great head strike defense. That's for sure. Very high level. But he still absorbs a lot of strikes per minute at distance. So what's happening here? Like, why is Hoofy getting into these super close volume battles? You don't love to see it for such a large favorite on the Hoofy side. It's just curious. And then if anyone's going for takedowns, well, Hoofy's not going for takedowns unless it's like a scissor kick, like one of those crazy ones. But he's not really going for any top time. Like Bobby, he at least attempts 1 takedown per 5 minutes of distance over his career. He's attempted 5 submissions. Opponents have attempted 5. But he only spends 9% of his total fight time being controlled. And Hoofy, for all of the amazingness and, people loving him, he's been controlled for 7%. And, he doesn't face that many total takedowns, 6 in his career. He stuffed 100%. But I'm really curious to see what happens if he slows down against a guy like Bobby Green. My concern, the speed, the attrition. What if it takes too long for Bobby to really get cooking? So tape is going to be necessary here. But just based off of the striking statistics, it might be worth a look on the dog side. It's just that's where tape and like using your eyes come in. And I don't know if I'm going to get to the dog shot here. So we'll find out. Tune in Thursday to be sure. But let me know if you're taking a dog shot. I'm curious. Moving along, we've got Amanda, her new haircut, Karen Lemos versus Yasmin, Princess Yasmin Lucindo, like from Aladdin. I don't know. I feel like I need better nicknames here. Gonna need your guys' help. Please give me some good nicknames in the comments in the chat. But yeah, we've got, Lemos is going to be 14 years older. She's going to be giving up 1 inch of reach, but she's going to be 1 inch taller. Lemos, southpaw. So that's a bit of an advantage over Lucindo, who's the orthodox fighter. But when you look at kind of who's expected to be winning rounds on a minute winning basis, Lemos only really wins about 50% of her rounds on general, whereas Lucindo is more to a 2/3. And when you see them in like the distance striking, they're both at a similar output. They both have a similar differential, but the power for Lemos is the real big difference It's just Lucinda. I mean, I think she's got a granite chin. She's super young. And I don't think the knockdown rate for Lemos comes into effect as much in this matchup. We will see that Lucindo does also have 24% better significant strike defense for the head. So Lemos, with all of her power, is she going to be able to touch Lucindo? Especially that she's giving up reach here. I know we look back to the Yasmin Jauregui fight. That was a short notice one. Lucindo's debut, super young, and somewhere where she was giving up reach advantage and height. It's not the case here. Yeah, so the defense, definitely an advantage for Lucindo. And let's take a look at the wrestling because, oh my word, looks like we have another advantage in the Lucindo department. So it's looking like a trifecta. Chronic Combat's already got a few units out there on the Lucindo side, and I'd recommend, based off what we're seeing here, seems like Lucindo's got an advantage basically everywhere, and Lemos is going to be reliant on power and big moments to win against Lucindo. I like the volume, I like the wrestling, and I like the the ability to strike in combination herself for Yasmin Lucindo. Very interesting to see that the tail of the tape in a closely lined fight, Lucindo, like, we're still sitting around minus 136 on Bet Online. So plenty of value to be had, especially for someone with this many different advantages. I think Lemos, she has a bit more popularity, has faced a little bit better competition, has a title shot under her belt, but like, I don't think she's getting back to the title picture. I think at 38 years old, killing herself to make 115, I wouldn't even be surprised if this fight somehow sees an under if she gasses out badly. So the fall off could be coming soon. And yeah, Yasmin could win by fuller lips. You never know. Could be a big factor in this fight. I don't want to know to have to find out. So we're moving on. And I will say, I'm pretty sure this fight's not actually happening, so I'm not going to waste your time. 90% sure that Big Tram Tom Nolan's coming in to save the day, fill in for Jalen Turner, but we're going to wait for the official announcement. Yeah, Lemos on the way down, not loving it. Lucindo side stands out. All right, we got our next matchup, co-main event. We got Justin the Highlight Gaethje, Rafael Adaman-Fiziev. Wow. Okay, we got a rematch here, short notice. We've got Gaethje coming off being, legitimately turned into a corpse in the octagon. Legitimately turned into a corpse. So on that note, quick water break. We're gonna give you guys a little sauciness. Yeah, really interested in this rematch here. Tell the tape. I know we've seen these guys fight before, but let's take a look at the statistical analysis of what we could expect on an average basis. They have tons of experience for us to comb through. Really interested to see what we come up with here. So, 4 years younger for Fiziev. We've seen Gaethje come off of death in the octagon versus Max Holloway. All the usual suspects. No surprise. That's right. Appreciate you jumping in as well. Hope you threw a subscribe. Appreciate you, Daz. This is going to be new content coming to you guys weekly. Me and the Guru have a tough time lining up our schedules with our jobs. We've definitely taken on more responsibilities as we've started and seen our show continue. But what I do have is some good free time to hit this hard-hitting analysis myself, and he has some time to do some gut reactions after the fight. So hope you guys are enjoying the new content because we figured why not give you a little more TB and the Guru? It doesn't always have to be the combo. We can split it up and get you guys some more love. Appreciate you, Daz. You're the real one. All right, so Fiziev, 4 years younger. He's coming off an ACL. Gaethje's coming off of extreme concussive syndrome. 1 inch reach advantage for Fiziev. He's giving up 3 inches of height. Switch stance for Fiziev. Gaethje, much more typical to stay in the orthodox, but he's got the ability to switch. Both these guys have faced a high level of competition, and both these guys have won approximately a little less than 50% of the rounds that they've fought that have gone to the scorecards of what they've been expected to win. Yeah, they win 50% of it. So pretty even in that regard. Now, they both spend the vast majority of their time at distance. The difference is, Fiziev has maybe spent the tiniest bit more time controlling his opponents in the clinch or being controlled um, on the mat. They've both faced a lot of takedown attempts. Fiziev has held up with way better takedown defense in general. I just don't think either of these guys realistically are going to be sheeting takedowns on the other. So let's keep our analysis on the striking side. And what we saw in the first matchup of their fight, I think that'll be helpful to go back to their fight, but after we look at their gross statistical analysis. So overall, Fiziev goes about even per minute at distance with his opponents. The difference is he has a better knockdown ratio than his opponents, and he's typically landing more damage in those exchanges. Justin Gaethje, he gets outlanded by about 1 strike per minute at distance. Now, another factor when you fight Max Holloway, no matter how many fights you have in your career, that can skew some of your differentials. So we see overall Gaethje does land about 6 strikes per minute at distance. So technically he's landing more, but he's also absorbing a lot more. Fiziev eats about 5 strikes, whereas Gaethje eats about 7. Distance strike defense, both these guys realistically not the best defense. And that's kind of surprising to see on the Fiziev side. He's got 51% head strike defense. I'm sorry, 58% head strike and 51% distance. Technically, Justin Gaethje has better defense on paper. That might be surprising to some people, including myself, honestly. Gaethje lands a much higher percentage of kicks to the legs. Fiziev lands a much higher percentage of kicks and boxing combos to the body, whereas Fiziev's Gaethje's much more of a headhunter and calf kicker. Fiziev going to mix up his strikes with kicks a lot more to the body. And he does a great job overall of doing that. Now, another aspect is we see that, they both essentially take place, the same amount of total strikes landed in the clinch at distance. So, yeah, if this fight's taking place at range, we should probably see a pretty close fight like we saw the last time. Now, what could have changed since the last time these guys fought? Fiziev going through ACL rehab. Now, what I could tell you is there are some injuries where people are coming off. Yeah, his hand speed is something. And Moise, what's going on, brother? Thanks for hopping in. Appreciate seeing you. Make sure you guys have thrown a like if you haven't already. Helps a ton. Gets more people suggested to watch the content. And it costs you nothing. So why not, right? Throw a like. Fiziev, ultimately, coming off an ACL injury, we have high-level protocols for the exact thing to do following an ACL tear, replacement, and recovery. And in that matchup with Gamrot before the aforementioned ACL injury, he is just eating this guy up, stuffing the takedowns, winning the striking battle at distance. One of his kicks lands on the elbow and just his knee is donezo. It happens. Now, what happens in an ACL repair and recovery? Overall, you get stronger than ever. You have to challenge your proprioception. Your ability to load that leg is challenged like you've never seen. And in that focused rehab, in my time working in a physical therapy clinic, you could just see an absolute you end up getting stronger than you ever have on your non-surgical side because of how much work you're putting in to bring the other side along. I trust that Fiziev's working with all the best doctors and rehab clinic and treatment team. And he is a very high level athlete that went in with no real other pre-existing injuries that we know of. Justin Gaethje, on the other side, I've also worked with a lot of patients that have wrestling concussion injuries, repetitive concussion injuries. And seeing Justin Gaethje coming off of a really bad knockout loss in his last fight against Max Holloway, and we're talking about this guy looked like he was dead on the octagon when you go back and watch it. It's not great. And I feel terrible for him. But here he is talking about how he doesn't really care if it's life or death, and he's got to stop being careful. He's got to go out there and fight and, just take his chances. And, he's still got one more chance. But if he loses, it could be retirement. So these are the things I'm going to tell the tape show. We got to do a little digging into these matchups and see if, there's anything outside of the tape study that can, help us out. Max Holloway lands 181 strikes in the last matchup against Justin Gaethje. Before that, Justin Gaethje was getting absolutely in a great striking match with Poirier before landing his own knockout. And before that's the Fiziev fight. So Fiziev, after the Gaethje fight, he fights Gamrot, and we talked about that one. So now let's go back, look at their first matchup. Justin Gaethje, originally in that matchup, if we go round by round, seems like Fiziev clearly wins round 1, outlands him by 4 strikes. Round 2, also outlands Justin Gaethje by 3 strikes. In the last round, we see Justin Gaethje outlands Fiziev 54-38. And in that, a lot of the strikes as the fight goes on end up in the clinch down the stretch. So all the movement, the speed, everything from Fiziev, it slows down as the fight goes on, and Gaethje is able to catch him in round 3. But rounds 1 and 2, man, upon rewatch and looking back at the stats, you probably could have given the fight to Fiziev on initial look. But they have Gaethje at plus 200 in that fight, where in this one, the line's a lot closer. And this time, I think that there's overreaction, overcorrection, because Fiziev only gets outlanded by 6 in their last matchup, and the vast majority of that happens in round 3. So, yeah, to me, I think we're going Fiziev here. Tune in Thursday to find out exactly what props will do, but tell the tape and an analysis of their last fight and an analysis of their injury history coming into this matchup. The war of attrition, I think, is catching up to the highlight. Justin Gaethje and Adaman Fiziev going to be coming off of the rehab and most focused training of his life, ready on short notice because of all the hard work he's been putting in. So no, I can tell you, thank goodness, I am okay. I still have my, I'm not incontinent, but what we're doing is a little early analysis show, just getting a tail of the tape for the people. Without getting into too much tape study, want to just look into these matchups, any camp changes, anything injury-wise we can dive into, height, reach, age, striking pace, grappling pace, cardio, attrition, head strike defense, all these key factors, what striking stance they use, minute winning ability. These are the type of things we're going to be doing on the tail of the tape. So, hey, make sure you guys tune in, because this is not to tell you who to bet. This is to kind of just guide us all as a fact-finding mission. And also, we got to workshop some nicknames. So if you have better nicknames than what I give to the fighters, and you don't want to hear the guru cry at me, and you think you could do better, this is your time to do it. Yo, nice. Fenyo, thanks for hopping in, man. Let me know what you think. Appreciate you. I can't wait to see the clips you put up online. New show without Guru, but he's also doing a new show Saturday night into Sunday after the fights to give you guys his gut reaction. So make sure you're joining there. Make sure you guys have liked and subscribed to this show, because we're having a great time. We're doing the hard hitting, early research, just kind of priming the system before I go do my tape study tonight, tomorrow, and into Thursday before the Thursday show. And yeah, you can never get into too much tape study, but what's really bad is doing tape study without knowing what you're looking for. So what we're doing here is trying to figure out, hey, what should I be looking for in the tape study? And, if I'm expecting a guy to wrestle, has he ever done it before? Well, I should know which fights to go to look at to see if he has done it before and what it looks like. Or has he had to defend it and what it looked like? Have they ever gassed out and what it looked like? On Fiziev first fight, can say Justin nipped it late after rewatch. And yeah, he definitely won round 3. That's for sure. Round 2, the swing round, it's debatable, but the fact of the matter, it was a close fight. Justin's only gotten older and taken more damage. Fiziev, we'll see what he looks like coming off the ACL. All right. Appreciate all you guys in the chat. Let's try to keep this under an hour. We're going on to the main event. Alex Poatan Pereira versus Magomed Cousin Mose Ankalaev. Wow. Yeah, please let me know if you guys like Mose. He's running through the farm, trying to get the barn set up for your stay at the Schrute family, Airbnb or whatever you want to call it. So, in this matchup, Poatan, he's going to be 5 years older. Not what you love to see, but at the upper weight classes, it's not as big of a deal. Reach, we've got a 4-inch reach advantage on the Pereira side and also a 1-inch height advantage. Pereira was killing himself to make middleweight. I mean, this guy could probably fight at heavyweight if he wanted to. I don't think either guy has a real size advantage per se, but Pereira, he's going to be the longer and taller guy. Couple big light heavyweights. Stance, it says orthodox for both. Quite frankly, I'm pretty sure both of these guys can switch stance. And Ankalaev, I feel like he actually fights a little bit more out of southpaw as well. So don't trust UFC stats on that one realistically. Yeah, shout out to you guys hopping in, working hard, making sure you're checking out the content. Please make sure you're throwing a like. You don't have to do donations and all that. All this content's free, but you know how to support your boys if you want to. Looking into the expected round percentage, I mean, Ankalaev typically is winning minutes on a higher ratio over his UFC career. As we go into some of the distance striking, we see Pereira has a pretty distinct pace advantage. He lands nearly double the strikes per minute at distance, 6.1 compared to 3.7. And with that, he outlands his opponents nearly 2-1, or he lands 2 more strikes per minute at distance. And Ankalaev typically only lands about 0.5 more than his opponents. They each have a knockdown ratio of 7-1. So we've seen each guy kind of tested once in their career. Pereira cutting himself down to middleweight against Izzy. So that was the notable one, whereas Ankalaev, we had a close call with Thiago Moises. We can see that typically Pereira is going to land most of his strikes at distance. And he's a way more varied striker, landing pretty evenly across head strikes and then splitting up the body and legs also pretty evenly. Ankalaev, a bit more of a head hunter, a lot less calf kicks. And we can see that the accuracy on the Pereira side, I mean, he is 13% more accurate, and he has almost double the output, and he has a 4-inch reach advantage. All right, well, if the fight's taking place at distance, we're taking Pereira easily. Because the defense as well, while both of these guys, they have a decent ability. Ankalaev is really a lot more careful with his head strike defense, but that doesn't mean he's impervious. We've seen him rocked and wobbled on the regional. We've seen him rocked and dropped in the UFC. Now, if this fight's taking place in the grappling realm, I mean, pretty clearly, Ankalaev has an 88% control rate of total clinch and ground time. That's pretty elite. He basically doesn't get controlled. It was against Paul Craig. He actually got taken down a couple times, but he reverses, gets out of it. He spends 28% of his total fight time in control. He's landed 10 total takedowns to his opponent's 3, whereas Pereira's been taken down 9 times, and he's gotten 1 of his own. Ankalaev, 31% accuracy, but he's only shooting about 1.5 takedowns per 5 minutes of distance. So he's really not a high volume takedown artist. And I don't know what it would look like if he committed to that game plan for 5 rounds. Quite frankly, we haven't seen it. In his other title fight matchup against Jan Blachowicz, we see him commit to it for a couple rounds, but we see him commit to it for a couple rounds after it's a bit too late. And there's a reason why that fight goes to a draw. And it looks like it was a ton of leg strikes. And isn't it interesting? More volume, more power. Takedown defense, 70%. And he's faced 2 takedowns per 5 minute at distance, Alex Pereira. And he's been working at Teixeira MMA. I think, if anything, I would expect that Pereira's takedown defense and grappling game would have improved in his time. Whereas Ankalaev, I'm pretty sure what we've seen is what we're getting on his end. I don't think there's been any improvements per se, besides sharpening the tool shed. He's a very high-level technical fighter, but we've seen lots of lapses in a judgment and fight IQ. So the question remains, what's going to happen? Will this fight take place at distance? If so, clear Pereira victory. And if this fight takes place in the clinch or on the mat, are we going to see Pereira using his takedown defense and ability to use damage to separate people from consciousness before they separate him from his feet? Well, that's going to be a good question. Based off the stats here, and based off the fact that I can't control the controller for Ankalaev, I know that Pereira gets a chance to start striking from distance all 5 rounds, and I know that he's going to try to fight in the area of the fight that he's the strongest, I can't guarantee that Ankalaev is going to wrestle. For that matter, tell the tape takes me to Alex Pereira. But it should be an amazing fight, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Ankalaev win a few rounds, especially if he's using his takedowns. But I think his leg kick defense and his inability to work at a high pace is going to be his downfall at the end of the day, whether by knockout or by decision. And still, Alex Pereira. So shout out to you guys. Make sure you're joining us live every Thursday, 8 o'clock. This is a new show, TB Scouting MMA, bringing you the tale of the tape. Chronic Combat is up 20 units in 2025 at Bet MMA Tips. If you're following me on Picket, well, I'm up more than that, quite frankly. I've been hitting live basketball. We've been betting NFL. But what you're here for is the UFC. And that's where we try to track it before the fights start. You don't want to know what we do live. You know, you might not be able to match our plays if we're live betting, which we are every fight. If you want to learn more about live betting, we could do a workshop one day to give you guys kind of what to look for. But realistically, you don't want to see what our track results are based off live betting. If you do, go to Picket. You're going to see everything we do there. If not, Bet MMA, we have it loaded before every fight night in an easy to digest manner. And hey, we're up solidly. We've started our last few years basically break even, and we're solidly into the profit to start this year. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much, Daz. Thank you, Grateful Dude. We appreciate you. And Kiwi, thank you so much for always joining and being grateful and gracious with your hard-earned Australian dollars. And if you guys enjoyed it, please let us know in the comments. Please like the video. Please share, just not to your grandma. We don't need her knowing we're going to grandma's couch cushions to place all these degenerate bets. But this has been TB's Tale of the Tape. Let me know what you think and stay tuned because we will be back on Thursday live at 8 p.m. with Sean Orr joining me and the Guru for a great time. Until then, we'll see you then.